Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick and this is MSFS Flight Plans. If you're joining us for the first time, you're about to discover that all we do around here is try to find the coolest looking places in the entire sim to fly over. And then a couple days before the flight, I will try to learn as much as I can about the location so that not only are we looking at cool things, but hopefully learning some cool things too. And I do it all just to give you one more reason to get up in the air again and again. So this is going to be a flight of firsts for us here today on the channel. And one of the first things that we're going to do is fly over and in and from Tajikistan, both for the first time on our channel and for my first time ever. I may have flown over here at some point, literally flown over it, from point A to point B, and this just happened to be underneath us. But I can say with certainty that I have never landed or departed from this country. And much to all of our delight, we are going to see that this place looks fantastic, and nothing about it is modified except for this airport, which is a Freeware airport. And I think that's how we got all these nice Chinooks over here to our left. And there's also a military airport a little bit further from here as well, and I'll tell you all about where we are in just a minute. But as you can see, those helicopters look really nice. They're modeled quite well. And I don't know, there might be some more even further down. I just started in this parking area here, but this is pretty neat for Freeware. And of course, I'll put a link for that in the video description, along with the link to this entire flight plan. So the location that we're at is Dushanbe, which is the capital of Tajikistan. And how many of you knew that? It's okay, I didn't know either. And we're going to be in the Twin Otter, a plane I absolutely love, and you probably noticed that we had floats on it. So you know I've got something up my sleeve. And indeed I do. Once we get started up here, I'm going to give you yet another surprise. Another first for this flight on this channel. Let's just get the, okay, click over. And to the left. We'll slide our condition over. I left the weather as it is. It's an absolutely beautiful day. I don't know how the wind's going to be, but so far so good. Not a cloud in the sky, which looks fantastic. Alright, you guys ready for this? Out of necessity for this flight, we're going to be sitting in the first officer's seat. And you will fully understand why shortly. And I don't fly from this side of the plane very often, so I'll need you guys in the UK are probably thinking, yeah, that's normal. That's the way you're supposed to do it. And drive on that side of the street too, for crying out loud. But I actually had, I don't know, about a month or so ago, a nightmare that I was driving on this side of a car, on this side of a street. I don't know what country I was in, because you know some Caribbean places they do that too. And it was horrible. I just couldn't get the hang of it. I kept driving all over the place, crashing into things. So I need one of our brothers or sisters out in the UK to let me know it's going to be alright. Just hold my hand through this. So we're almost at the runway. I just wanted to come over here because I wanted to show you those helicopters. We could have just started at the end of the runway. And in fact, if you download our flight plan, it will start you at the end of the runway, because not knowing those helicopters were there, I picked a spot in this parking area, but I don't think it would let me start there because there's already a helicopter there. So it is going to start you at the runway. At the end of the runway, you'll just have to drive over here if you load this flight plan to check those out. And you should, because it looks really cool. And we're obviously, well, not obviously, because this is an amphibious plane, but you probably guessed that we're not going to be landing on a hard surface. And you will see why in just a little bit. So this area, I mean, just amazing. I was flying around out in the Alps not too long ago, before this flight, just looking at a few spots, because I just did Geneva, I think, in the sim, so I was kind of flying around out there, and I was reminded of how bad the stretching and popping up in the Alps is. I mean, it's really bad, which is just a shame because, I mean, how often do we fly out there? There's so many beautiful areas. But what you're going to see out here, none of that. I didn't have a single issue with any part of these mountains at all. And we're going to fly right over. And we're going to circle up around the city of Dushanbe, which is out that way. And we'll be to our right, which is one of the reasons I'm sitting on this side of the plane. Circle around just to get some altitude, and then we're going to come over those mountains up ahead there. Because the reason we're out here is because we're going to check out the Nurek Dam. That's N-U-R-E-K. And I'll tell you why that's significant in just a minute. And I love the Twin Otter, I really do. I've always loved it, ever since it came out. But something has happened with my autopilot where it won't function properly. It just keeps setting off the 1,000 feet away from the altitude target horn. Like, it'll work. It just keeps making that alarm go off, which is insufferable. So I'm just going to hand fly it. I'm guessing it's some kind of update that needs to be done that's now never going to come, because they said they're not going to update this plane anymore. But I like it enough to fly it, and we needed something that could land in the water, and could fly pretty fast, and could land in a very short distance, so here we are. And we'll do a rolling start since we have a long runway. And I'm going to try to get up to about 6,500 feet. That's where we're going to need to be to clear the mountains once we get over downtown, and we're going to head directly behind us after we circle around over there. So So let's just get up in there, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the town of Dushanbe and much more about the Nurek Dam as we get going. But let me just get going, for starters. And I'm not even going to put any flaps out because this is such a long runway. We should have no problem. But I will need to remember to pull up our tiny little wheels that stick out from the floats. Alright, so we'll go ahead and do that now. And maybe once I stabilize... Oh, you know what? I already had the gears up, so I don't have to worry about that. They probably just pulled up as soon as I came off the ground. Either that or I just skidded my way down the runway on our floats. Which, you know, it's a twin Otter. It's built tough. I think they start them out if you accidentally leave the gear up. So this is the town of Dushanbe here. And if you didn't know any better, you'd probably say that looks pretty neat. Looks a little bit default AI-ish, and it probably is. But when we look at the satellite map at the end, which we will do, because of course that's what we always do on this channel, let me pull the throttles back so I'm not up in the red zone there, you'll see that there's some more stuff down here than is actually rendered here in the sim. But despite being in Tajikistan and being in the middle of nowhere, this whole country looks, you know, if you just scrape this city off this map and left dirt, that's pretty much what this whole country looks like. Beautiful mountains, lots of desert. But then here, right in the middle of it, we have Dushanbe. And it's, despite how it's been ruled for the past several decades, and despite being out here in the middle of nowhere, it's actually a pretty hip and modern city, if we could see everything that's really out here. They've got sports complexes, big stadiums, arenas, a water park. You can see they got a power plant up there. They got museums and palaces, all kinds of stuff. Really neat. And one of the big things that caught my eye on the Google map is right here, which is so new that it may just be being built if it's not just rendered flat, which is always a possibility. Is something called the Tea Room, but it looks more like a Roman palace. And it's about a 400,000 square foot building that we would probably call a convention center if we saw it anywhere else. But they've got bowling alleys and movie theaters and restaurants and shops and all kinds of cool, amazing things in there. It's so weird looking at my... I'm used to glancing to my right to see my gauges, now I gotta look to my left. That's alright, we're gonna do this, it'll be fine. Now let's pull the RPMs back a little bit, keep those in the right zone. So that's a big thing they had there. The stadium, I think, is being built brand new, and I think this is it right here, and it probably should just be a vacant lot that they made. I don't know what they made, a couple flat blocks there. But you can see they got a lot of gardens and stuff down here. The gardens all look really good. In fact, this looks unusually good considering how default AI-ish a lot of the other stuff looks out here. That power plant looks pretty accurate. They do have a big cooling tower out there. They got all these gardens down here. This is a huge botanical garden up here. So they have the huge stadiums, which it looks like neither of them rendered in here. And these are a bunch of like indoor sports arenas right here. Those have more convex looking domes on the top of them, so those didn't look quite right, but the footprints are right. And again, I'm not taking you guys out here to blow your mind with the graphics, but just because we had to get some altitude. And in just a second, we'll see a place called the Palace of the Nation, which is where the, I guess the equivalent of the Capitol building would be. And it looks pretty cool too. And this river down here that runs through it is called the Varzab, which is an awesome name for a river. And there's the Capitol building, which again has kind of a dome on it and looks a little bit more palatial than that. And there's where their water park is, probably also being built. I think this stuff has been built up relatively recently. That's a huge horse track right there. But they got big gardens and stuff out here in front of the presidential palace. So that's the Varzab, and then this river running out here is called the Kafrinigan River, which doesn't sound very Tajikistanish, but I don't know how they say words out here, so these two things connecting up here is probably what put this spot on the map a long time ago, and they said there have been recognizable cultures out here since about 400 BC, but they think that there may have been Neolithic habitation out here, which would have gone about 6,000 years ago at least. Alright, we got another 1,000 feet to go, and I'm going to try to track... I'm tracking towards that white line there on my GPS map. I'm not even looking over to my left at little NavMap, because if I did that, I'd have to go like that. Although that view's not too bad, is it? And you're going to see all the texturing, all the resolution on these mountains just looks so good. So the direction we're going to go is right out here, and we're going to see another little area by another river, not this one here, and that's where the dam's going to be. So as we head out there, I'll tell you a little about the history of this place. Just kind of trying to... Alright, let me start trimming down some. just to make sure we don't overshoot that. Alright, I like this rate of climb, so we'll try to hang here for a little bit. Throttle looks pretty good. Pick that up just a little bit. Alright, everything's looking good. So the dam's only about 20 miles in front of us. This is going to be a very short flight. And the only airport around here is the one we just took off from. And since the dam is obviously near some water, yes, of course we're going to land on the water. Not a sanctioned runway, but I know people out here. It's cool. So if you're not sure where in the world we are, again, that's okay. How many people could point to Tajikistan on a map? You probably heard of Afghanistan, I'm sure. And that's just south of us, so they share their southern border with Afghanistan. Boy, that's a tongue twister. Share their southern border. I can't even say it. Try that one. Uzbekistan is to the west. And in Kyrgyzstan, that's K-Y-R-G-I. I'm not saying Kurdistan, I've heard of that, but Kyrgyzstan I've not. That's the northern border. Then they've got Chinistan on the eastern side. And though I could probably get away with it if I just kept my mouth shut, it's actually just China. There's not a place called Chinistan yet. So after reading through a very confusing timeline of what has happened out here, since the first civilizations came out, I'll just summarize it by saying it's played host to virtually every major world religion. Right now it's mostly Muslim, about 90% Muslim. And pretty much every major Eurasian dynasty has also ruled this place at one time or another. But if we fast forward a little bit to more modern history, in 1929, the Russians rolled in and made it part of the Soviet Republic. And on September 9th of 1991, let me trim down here. As the USSR was falling apart, Tajikistan declared itself a sovereign nation, immediately launching itself into a 5-year-long civil war that was apparently pretty nasty. Alright, come on, Twin Otter. I know I usually have you on autopilot. Let me see if I can just get you to behave nicely. Look at those mountains down there. Look at that. No melting, no stretching, beautiful texturing, and that's not even close to the best of it. That river down there looks somewhat normal. We're going to fly pretty close to these up here. Wait till you check that out. Alright, I'm just going to keep throttling back. Let me pull the RPMs back because it keeps wanting to climb. Yeah, so they entered a 5-year-long civil war. And on that note, I often find myself wondering, in light of current events over the last couple of decades, that, and I know this is going to be a very uncouth thing to say, but I'm sure some of you guys have pondered the ethical conundrum of the U.S. in particular, getting a wild hair and deciding that the best thing to do, in the name of freedom, of course, is to depose all these autocratic dictators. I'm sure it doesn't have anything to do with money or natural resources, because of their brutal leadership of their people, and then we get rid of them, and then the place descends into civil war, and way more people wind up dead and impoverished and starving to death than when the dictator was in place. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but so far our batting record is not great. Look at that down there. Fantastic. This little patchwork of fields down here. Beautiful. This terracing. Amazing. All this stuff up here is just amazing. But fortunately for this place, they still have an authoritarian dictator holding everything together. And he's been running the show since '94. So he came into power during the midst of that civil war, I guess, because that was during that time period. I mean, you can even see the edges of the carved little roadways here in these mountains. And look at these little rivulets coming down through here. Why couldn't they do something like that up in the Alps? So much of the Alps looks so bad. And other than that garbage that we see up around the tops of the Alps, everything else looks just so good, but this is just unbelievable. Look at that up there. Real nice. So now that they got their own dictator out here, he of course does usual dictator-like things by torturing people, arbitrarily imprisoning them, removing all civil liberties. I don't think they have any freedom of religion out here, so if you're into the politics of places like, I don't know, San Francisco, Portland, I'd probably scratch this place off of your bucket list. Alright, so we're going to come over a little town here, and the dam is going to be along the river at the end of this town, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. For one reason, I'm out here because, as I was looking around on the internet at something totally unrelated to simming the other day, a top 10 list of some kind popped up, which is like the ultimate clickbait for me. Someone sends me a top 10 list of anything, I don't care how many viruses it's going to put on my computer, I'm going to open it. And this one happened to be the top 10 biggest dams in the world, so you know I had to check that out. And the largest one, naturally, is where today the largest and longest and biggest of everything is, which is China. So I threw 30 minutes of my life away flying out there to check that out on the very remote chance that it might have been modeled properly. And actually it looked beautiful flying out there. It was up in the mountains of central China, and it was up in the clouds, and it was just so beautiful. And even the little towns around there didn't look terrible like they usually do in China. But then I got to the dam and you couldn't even tell it was a man-made structure of any kind. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. So this is number 2 on the list. Actually number 3 if you count the biggest dam, if we can call it that, in the world, which also happens to be in Tajikistan, if you can believe that, is an earthen dam that was naturally formed from an earthquake. But this is the second highest man-made dam in the world out here. And it was built during the Soviet era. And the fact that it's still standing makes it, I guess, some sort of technological marvel. The Soviets could get anything to survive for that long. But as you're going to see, it probably doesn't look like you're imagining. And if you've never flown out here to see this dam, I'm going to bet that you've never seen anything quite like it. Look at that down there. Just perfect. Because this is not a concrete dam. The core of it is concrete, but the rest of it is just like fill dirt, and it is 1,000 feet high. And the reason why I'm sitting on this side of the plane is because we're going to have to come down here. It's right like a hairpin turn right around this corner right here. And when I flew it the first time on the other side of the plane, because of where these mountains are, I just got a really quick peek at it. We couldn't see any of the hydroelectric facility down at the bottom. And so they dammed up a river that used to run out here between these and then winds out here, and there's a giant lake here now that was formed by the dam, which I'm going to try really hard not to let you look at, because despite how great this looks, it's got some of that stuff where the water's kind of running up the sides of it. Unbelievable. Just flawless. So we're going to come out here. I'm going to try to kind of come in this little valley over here, take a quick turn around, and then we're going to land somewhere down here. And on my original flight, I didn't land. I just stopped once I made sure we could see the dam, so we'll have to find a spot to put this baby down, which shouldn't be an issue. I see some big, wide stretches there, and you know this thing doesn't need much space to land, so we should be okay with that. But they got 9 turbines down here now, cranking out electricity, about 3,000 megawatts, or 3 gigawatts if you prefer. All right, we need to remember there's some bridges here. We don't want to hit those. Which supplies 98% of this country's power. And I would bet at least 80% of this country, at 1.2 million people living back there in Dushanbe, I bet most of them live right around here, because there just isn't much else out here, as you'll see when we get on the satellite map at the end. But this town looks pretty neat too, and I'm going to bet that this probably sprang up. They had to relocate tons and tons of people because this lake out here is gigantic. So they said they had to move a lot of people when they dammed that up, and then of course the people that built and are running the dam, I'm sure, moved out here too. But it looks like a neat little town. We'll get a nice low look at it once we come in for landing. And wait till you see this dam. It looks just as good as the rest of the scenery. And it looks just like you'd expect the Soviets to build in 1980. Not real clean looking, no precise edges on anything, but that's just how they like it, just to prove they can build something that shoddy that'll last for this long. And it has. And over here, hopefully we'll see a little spillway. It's not a little spillway that comes out the side where I think some of the water's diverted that's not going down through the turbines. But that shadow might be on it because the sun's over here somewhere. So there's the big lake, and out here, we won't fly over there to look at it, but there's a presidential palace on this little island out here. And I don't know what it looks like because I didn't go to see it before, but I found it on the Google Maps, so I'll show you that too. Alright, I'm going to start descending because I don't want to have to take a real fast descent when we try to come in and land this thing. Alright, this is the top part of the dam here, and we'll come around and take a real nice look at it. You'll see all of it out this window over here once we get down by it. But it is massive. Just huge. I'm going to try real hard not to crash into that mountain in front of us. So we're going to take a very, very tight turn once it comes into view so that we can get back down around and get set up for landing. But we'll see all the dam. Can you believe this? Can you believe how good this looks? Out here in Tajikistan. And I've flown out around northern Afghanistan. I was going to do some locations that we might recognize from where all the military bases were over the last 20 years. But other than military bases, there's not a lot to see out there. And it looks a bit drier than this does. The mountains didn't look too bad. There were some spots where it was just kind of flat. And look at that thing. So here's the hydroelectric facility down here, which looks amazing. And there's the dam, and that is exactly what it looks like in real life. All the weird, curvy, unsymmetrical lines and everything. That's just what it looks like. Wait till you see it on the satellite map. That is a spitting image of that thing. And you see that lake over there? See the water coming up the sides? Wish it wasn't doing that, but we're only going to get a little tiny look at that. Alright, so I'm keeping an eye on my turn indicator so we don't overdo it. Here's where all the little substations are. Look at that thing. I dare say it looks absolutely perfect. And that is not an add-on. It just looks like that. The only add-on in this whole flight is that airport we left from. Amazing. 1,000 feet tall, and there's, I think, 54 million cubic meters of dirt in there. It's so steep, I don't know how they keep it from sliding all the way down the hill there. But that's the secret of Soviet engineering. Making things really big that somehow hold themselves together. I see a tiny bit of stretching out of that little corner window there. That's the only bit of that I've seen on this flight at all. Alright, let's start cutting this, and then we'll look for some spots to come in for our landing. And if you haven't seen it yet, I did put up that video of the little bit more in-depth tutorial for a little NavMap for those of you that aren't real familiar with how to use that. Check it out. It is up now. I think it's like 17 minutes long, and it's just the basics. Just get in, get going, figure out how to use the thing if you've never used it before. A couple pointers if you are somewhat familiar with it. A couple of people have already let me know that they learned a few things from it, even though they already knew how to use it. Look, some more terracing down there. Just crazy. All right, I'm going to try to come in. If we can't hit this, I'll just pull over this way a little bit. I think that's that bridge up there, so we need to be mindful of that. Let's slow way down. Pull up a little bit to get down to flap speed. Looks like we got some snow in those mountains over there. And when you look on the satellite map, you can definitely tell it is snowy out there. Alright, I might have to pass that spot I was thinking about a little bit because we're still going a little fast. And I'm not going to go full flaps on this thing because when they're hanging all the way out, they are all the way out. And it's hard to keep from stalling. How many more notches do we have? Alright, that's good. I'm not going to go all the way. Alright, so I think I'm going to come over that second bridge. And then we'll just beach it over there before we take a look at the satellite map. But what a nice little trip. A little short hop flight. So if you want to use the flight plan and you want to fly it with autopilot, you should be good. Like I said, I didn't have it on autopilot for this flight because I didn't want to listen to that thing chirping the whole time. But when you get up by the dam, just be cautious because it may try to give you wider turns than I drew on there and you might miss some of that dam. So maybe just pop the autopilot off, and I drew it to come back over this water, so it will take you back out over this area if you want to do a water landing. But if you don't, I have it going back to that second airport that was just a little southwest of where we left from. So you can head over there too if you need to land on a solid surface. Alright, so I'm going to come right over that bridge there, which also looks great for a bridge down close to the water. Wonderful. And for a while the Soviets were running the show out here, Dushanbe was known as Stalinabad, which again, I would expect nothing less or more than that while the Soviets were out here. So if you want to really blow your friends' minds, you can tell them not only do you know where Tajikistan is on a map, but you know the capital is Dushanbe. Yep, I got you. Thank you for letting me know. Oh, we got plenty of space up there. But they got some of that water coming up on the sides, unless that's just a reflection over there. We'll pull up in someone's little field over here. Maybe they'll bring us out some local cuisine. Serving up for dinner. Alright, let's not hit the bridge. Let's not hit the bridge. How close are we to stalling? Alright, we're good. We're good. So far, so good. Alright, do not want to stall. Alright. Yep. And we'll throw the reverses on just to stop real quick here. Reverse. Okay, what do you guys think? Looks like a little open area over there. We'll cruise over there and park this sucker. Look at those mountains. This is just beautiful. And this is the importance, guys, of always checking on top 10 lists. And out there in China where that the huge dam was, or well, wasn't in Sim, is also where the largest, that part of central China, the largest bridges are. They got like the top 5 of the top 10 biggest bridges in the world are out there. And they got some other huge dams out there, but none of them so far. I checked out some of the big bridges. All of it looks just terrible. All right, hold on. Don't slam your face on the clear shield there. Okay. I don't need to use the parking brake, obviously, so let's just shut this down. And we'll check out a little NavMap. But we are going to have to check out Three Gorges at some point, and I think they do have add-ons for that, so maybe that'll look okay. It'd be the first thing that looked okay if it does. So let's see where in the world we are out here. So there's Saudi Arabia, India, Israel's over here, the Mediterranean, all that stuff over there. China is this gigantic area over here. We got the Koreas down there, Indonesia. And then here we are in the middle of nowhere. And there's where we took that dune flight over there. So let me just show you, if you want to fly out over there, but it was so far from any airport, I didn't do it. Here is where the largest dam in the world is. This was created by an earthquake of some kind, and that is the biggest dam in the world. So I guess it cut off these two lakes at some point, whenever that happened. But let's get back to the subject at hand. All right, so here's the other airport I flew into, and I believe that this one is a military base. Now, I don't know if they're going to have those cool-looking choppers that we saw. And just a little note on that. As you can see, I tried to start here, but it started me at the end of the runway. So if you want to check out those helicopters, this is where they are. And shoot, there might be some down here too. I didn't drive down there, but you may want to go check that out to see if they stuck anything else down there. So we just took off, cruised up here around, and this is what it should have been on the ground in Dushanbe. And you can see they got these huge stadiums out here, and here's where the tea house / convention center is. You can see that's big, and this they called a dance hall of some kind. It's called Barbad Hall, but I think it's a performing arts center, and this is a big man-made lake right here. And then there's some more sports complexes, some more beautiful gardens. There's their power plant, and that looked right. There's the botanical gardens, and then here is where their water park is, but that was just dirt, so that's probably pretty new too, I'm guessing. And then here's where the presidential palace is. And you can tell that's a big place. So it looked like the footprint was probably right, but the elevation certainly wasn't. And that's called Rudok Park out in front of it, a Rudaki Park. And then we came on out this direction here. And then this is really the only spot that's going to be tricky to fly over. This is at about 7,500 feet, so if you cut through this little pass, again at 6,500, you should be fine. But just be mindful of that if you're taking it on autopilot. You might have to get up to 7,500 to clear that spot right there. Here's the town of Dagana, which is right in front of the dam, and look at this. Looked exactly like that. Unbelievable. And there's the spillway there. And they got another little one too, but that one was in the shadows, so we wouldn't have been able to see that one. And if you want to try to see it, I'll show you where the presidential palace is. This is it right here. And I saw a picture online of some dude sitting out there fishing in a kayak, taking a picture of it like through his feet. And he's lucky he didn't get caught doing that. They probably would have thrown him in prison, maybe even tortured him for something like that. So if you do want to land on the water, again, you're not going to miss the river, so it's easy enough to spot that. But if you want to go all the way back here, then you can hit that other airport or just take off from the one that we landed at. It will be tough to miss it because there's not much else out there. And that's that. A nice little short hop flight. Go and check out that dam. If nothing else, it's definitely worth seeing that thing and the beautiful landscape. Just wonderful. I'd be interested to see how these mountains out here look. It's the mountains that, with the snow on them that always seem to cause the problems with the stretching and popping and the weird effects. So we didn't see any of that, so maybe that's why it looks so good. But that's that, guys. Can't wait to see you all again in the skies. Later.